Hi, I'm Tessa with Brainrot News, here with a few bits of algorithmically optimized bits of information for you to choke on. Today, we'll be tackling the many ways in which the internet has become an intolerable, unusable wasteland.
Brainrot the News.
Part 1. Defining the digital battlefield. Online influence campaigns are exactly what they sound like. Coordinated digital clusterfucks designed to sell you a mattress, convince you democracy is fake, or occasionally start a coup, all without ever leaving the comfort of a Wi-Fi signal. Imagine armies of accounts, some run by bored 20-somethings in marketing cubicles, and others by shadowy intelligence operatives or paid trolls, coordinating to steer your thoughts, stoke your fears, and reshape your beliefs without you ever realizing the water's been poisoned. One day, you'll see a factual statistic about unemployment plucked from a single county and then extrapolated as if it's a nationwide catastrophe. The next, you'll be deluged with pixel-perfect memes about how your next-door neighbor is secretly controlling the government. It's not always outright falsehoods. The real genius of these campaigns is that they don't need to fabricate entire scandals. They can take the tiniest sliver of truth, couch it in emotional triggers, and let your own biases fill in the rest of the story. At their core, influence operations thrive on inauthenticity. You'll encounter grassroots pages with thousands of likes that were built in a weekend by a handful of paid interns. You will see concerned citizens posting heartfelt testimonies that were ghost-written by PR firms. And you'll hear urgent news channels that exist only to recycle sensationalist headlines. But behind the scenes, platforms measure every click, every pause, every time your scroll finger hesitates over a post. They sell that data to anyone with a few $1,000s to spend. From campaign managers and corporate interests, all the way to foreign governments, all of them eager to turn your attention into a weapon. And once they have that weapon locked and loaded, there is no safe zone. There is no quiet scroll. Every swipe, tap, or share is a potential recruitment into their digital army, a momentary surrender of your autonomy. This is the new front line. Gone are the days when propaganda required giant posters and primetime TV slots. Now, you can wage a global manipulation campaign from a dingy cubicle in Mumbai or a government office in Moscow, all paid for with laundered money and carried out with off-the-shelf software. The result is a fractured public square where every voice seems suspicious, every fact seems negotiable, and the only certainty is that someone else is pulling the strings, and they are having a hell of a time watching you argue with your uncle about UFO landings. Welcome to the digital battlefield in today's war for hearts, minds, and the last shreds of shared reality. Part 2. The goals and motivations behind influence operations. Influence operations are the pinnacle of low-risk, high-reward warfare, where the currency is not money or territory, but your belief in basic facts and your willingness to share outrage. For political actors, whether elected officials, backroom power brokers, or clandestine foreign agencies, the payoff is immense. Why bother crafting coherent policy proposals when you can simply erode trust in the entire electoral process? A well-timed smear campaign can suppress turnout in key districts or ignite infinite culture war flashpoints that distract voters from real issues, all without firing a single shot. For corporations, influence operations have become a growth hack on steroids. If traditional advertising has become stale and people are tired of polished commercials, why not masquerade your marketing as genuine social movements? A sneaker brand creates a youth empowerment page and then quietly buys engagement to push a line of $200 shoes. Or a fast food chain plants undercover food critics praising limited-time menu items, then watches as their social feeds explode with user-generated praise, because nothing sells better than the perception of authentic buzz, and nothing is more authentic than a flood of accounts that look and sound like regular people. But the data harvested from every interaction, your likes, your comments, your watch time, gets packaged and sold to the highest bidder, perpetuating a cycle where attention is the ultimate commodity. Then there are the fringe profiteers, the conspiracy merchants, the so-called alternative influencers, who trade exclusively in fear and resentment. They do not care about votes or sneakers. They care about clicks and subscriptions. To them, your anxiety is a subscription model, your outrage is ad revenue, and your despair is a steady cash flow. They'll latch onto any grievance, like racial tension, economic insecurity, or gender politics, and amplify it to a fever pitch, keeping you on edge so you never stray far from their channel. It's the ultimate gig economy. Hustle, monetize other people's pain, and keep keep them angry enough to never notice the algorithm is the real puppet master. At the end of the day, influence campaigns are about one thing: control. Control of narratives, control of identities, and most crucially, control of behavior. By shaping the stories you see, they shape how you act, how you vote, what you buy, and even how you relate to your neighbors. And the relative anonymity of the digital realm means they can sow chaos and then slip away, leaving a burned out populace scrambling for answers that will never come. No wonder these tactics are so popular. They're cheap, they work, and they leave almost no paper trail. It's the perfect crime for the attention economy. Part 3. Who's pulling the strings? The puppeteer roster behind online influence campaigns is diverse, stretching from the marble halls of authoritarian regimes to the polished offices of Fortune 500 marketing firms, and everywhere in between. On the nation-state side, Russia's Internet Research Agency set the gold standard for troll farm chaos, flooding US social media with everything from fake patriot pages to grassroots-style agitprop. China's 50-cent army brings home the silver, employing tens of thousands of paid protesters to defend government policy and drown out dissent. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and even smaller autocracies have joined the fray, each adapting the playbook to local context and exporting lessons to global platforms. Closer to home, domestic political machines and their dark money masters have learned to weaponize the same tactics. Super PACs and shadowy nonprofit fronts pour untold millions into digital ads that masquerade as issue-based outreach. Under the pretense of public service, they run micro-targeted smear campaigns, voter suppression pushes, or culture war stunts in the communities that matter most. When an ad appears in your feed that perfectly aligns with your demographic profile down to your zip code, your income bracket, and your Netflix watch history, it probably feels like the company is speaking directly to you. And those ads often fall outside of the scope of traditional campaign finance regulations, making accountability almost impossible. Next up, the corporate marketing conglomerates. Ad agencies that one minute are selling you organic oatmeal and the next are ghostwriting political rhetoric for billionaire candidates. They pitch full-stack engagement services, including social listening, influencer seeding, bot amplification, and crisis management, all under one roof. A single team might launch a pro-entrepreneurship grassroots movement one day and leak a scandalous rumor about a rival firm the next. Rounding out the cast are the freelancers and fringe operators, conspiracy theory merchants on YouTube, Telegram channel shearers of human rage, and commercial trolls selling their services on dark web forums. They do not answer to governments or corporations. They answer only to profit margins and engagement metrics. For them, discrediting democracy or promoting snake oil supplements are just two sides of the same coin. If you can monetize anger and confusion, that's a business worth scaling. Every time you click, share, or comment, you validate the algorithmic signals they rely on. Your outrage becomes the feedback loop that trains the system. In this ecosystem, complicity is automated. You help amplify the very content that's poisoning your outlook on the world, all without leaving your couch. It's a deeply cynical arrangement, but it's the one we find ourselves in. A tangled web of state actors, private firms, and freelance propagandists, all collaborating in a massive, decentralized experiment in mass psychology. And the scariest part is that most of us do not even recognize that we are a part of this experiment. Part 4. The evolution of digital influence. Long before TikTok dance challenges and viral cat videos, the internet was a scrappy underground scene where activists emailed each other from dusty dorm rooms, and bulletin board systems crackled with secret manifestos. Back in the early 90s, a ragtag coalition of privacy advocates and amateur hackers galvanized around Lotus Marketplace, a doomed IBM project that threatened to compile personal data on millions of Americans. Their weapons of choice were mass emails and frantic bulletin board posts that branded the project Big Brother on crack, ultimately persuading IBM to bury the whole thing. It was low-tech guerrilla warfare, but it worked. The lesson was to mobilize people online, turn their outrage into real-world pressure, and watch corporate leviathans scurry for cover. By 1996, the first presidential campaign websites sprouted like weeds in newly germinated digital soil. Bill Clinton and Bob Dole each set up basic pages where you could read policy blurbs if you were patient enough to wait through 5-minute dial-up downloads. Donations via the web were a novelty, but the potential was obvious. insidious. What if you could target messages to supporters' inboxes instead of town hall meetings? A few years later, Howard Dean's 2004 presidential bid would seize on meetup.com to organize volunteers by the thousands, foreshadowing an age when fervent supporters weren't just mailing postcards, they were streaming live video from campaign rallies. Then came Facebook's fateful leap to the general public in 2006, followed soon after by Twitter's 140-character shouting platform. Suddenly, anyone with a cell phone could broadcast to millions, and everyone did. Early adopters marveled at the democratization of media, but journalists didn't have the luxury of bypassing verification protocols. And suddenly, news feeds were stuffed with hot takes, rumor mills, and hyper-targeted ads. Barack Obama's 2008 campaign leveraged these tools with surgical precision by micro-targeting fundraising appeals by demographic, releasing viral videos by issue, and utilizing a data-driven volunteer army that revolutionized modern campaigning. It was a preview of what was to come, a fully industrialized, algorithm-driven engine for shaping public sentiment. By 2014, the Kremlin's propagandists had taken note. Russia unleashed its troll farms on Ukraine's Maidan protests, flooding the discourse with contradictory narratives, claiming protesters were fascist and foreign-backed terrorists. The more extreme the claims, the more engagement, and engagement in turn fueled broader algorithmic distribution. A few years later, those same tactics metastasized into the 2016 US election, with fake social media pages targeting and impersonating groups such as African Americans, pro-Trump rallies organized by bots, and hyper-segmented ads targeting swing state voters with emotional appeals designed to suppress turnout. The goal wasn't persuasion through reason, but division through outrage. In turn, 2020's COVID pandemic wasn't just a public health crisis. It was a grand, unmoderated experiment in collective gullibility, broadcast live on every social media feed. The infodemic, a term coined in 2003 that came back into prominence in 2020, was a tidal wave of sewage pumped directly into the global town square, drenching everyone in unverified cures involving everything from bleach to colloidal silver. Suddenly, the internet landscape included not just homegrown hoaxes, but entire networks of seemingly legitimate news sites, Kremlin-backed proxy domains churning out tailored falsehoods and crudely doctored images and video clips, designed not to inform, but to thoroughly disorient and sow chaos far beyond their borders. It turned out that sowing enough sheer, unadulterated nonsense created the perfect conditions for people to embrace everything from pharmaceutical snake oil to the idea that the virus was a hoax invented by, well, depending on the day, take your pick. Fast forward to 2025, influence operations have evolved into a sprawling, globalized enterprise. AI-powered bots craft and publish content at scale, bullying both humans and rudimentary detection systems. Dark web cartels sell influence as a service, bundling custom deepfakes, targeted troll armies, and viral marketing stunts for clients ranging from autocrats to disgruntled frat brothers. The technologies have become cheaper, faster, and more accessible, lowering the barrier for anyone with an internet connection to wage psychological warfare online. In the shadow of these developments, public discourse has fractured beyond recognition. Every community, every demographic slice, and every pet enthusiast subreddit has its own tailored drip of fear, anger, or apathy. The history of online influence is a chilling chronicle of how genuine activism and utopian promise devolved into a systemic manipulation and commercial exploitation, and there is no sign of a course correction. Part 5. The Arsenal of Deception. Let's peel back the curtain on the toolbox these digital puppeteers wield. Think of it as your friendly tour through a house of horrors engineered for maximum psychological damage, each tactic honed for emotional impact and algorithmic virality. We have graduated from grainy Photoshop jobs to AI algorithms that can swap faces and video and transform anyone's voice into a perfect replica. Imagine a clip of your senator confessing to war crimes, or a video of a tech CEO admitting his products are backdoors for surveillance. They're so convincing that even trained professionals struggle to spot the fakery, and each new deepfake model is cheaper, faster, and more realistic than the last. Compared to the simple retweeting machines of days past, modern bots can monitor trending topics, analyze sentiment, and inject comments with contextually relevant yet inflammatory content. They move in synchronized swarms, boosting chosen hashtags, spamming comment sections, and gaming trending algorithms to make it look like organic outrage. And because each bot can operate moderate hundreds of accounts simultaneously, they create the illusion of widespread consensus where none exists. So, if bots are automatic weapons, sock puppets are sniper rifles. Human-run accounts that slip into conversations with plausible backstories, genuine-sounding language, and a knack for persuasion. Troll farms employ thousands of these operatives, each juggling multiple personas, posting in dozens of forums, and weaving threads of disinformation that snake through social feeds. They'll escalate from friendly engagement to personal attacks in a heartbeat, keeping the victim off balance and consumed by the ordeal. In addition to that, astroturfing is the practice of manufacturing grassroots movements out of thin air, hiring cohorts of accounts to comment, like, and share until a real user believes they're witnessing a spontaneous uprising. People with fringe beliefs think that thousands of others share their views, except those thousands are bots, paid commenters, or part-time internet mercenaries. Astroturfing masks the true source of influence, allowing corporate or political clients to dodge responsibility while claiming a mandate from the people. Finally, the piece de resistance, the platforms themselves. Everything about modern social networks, from trending topic algorithms to For You feeds, is designed to maximize engagement, and nothing drives engagement like sensationalism. These systems automatically reward posts that trigger outrage, fear, or moral panic, even if they're toxic or patently false. Bad actors simply feed the algorithm what it craves: incendiary headlines, angry rants, and divisive memes. The algorithm says more of this, and the influence campaign reach multiplies. Put it all together, and you have a self-perpetuating engine of manipulation. Bots and sock puppets seed the disinformation. Memes and deepfakes amplify it. Algorithms reward it, and real users, duped by their own emotions, spread it further. Every time someone shares a sensational post without verifying it, they don't become a victim. They become an accomplice, feeding fresh ammunition into the arsenal of deception. These tactics have grown more sophisticated, but the goal remains the same: hijack your attention, corrode your trust, and shape your reality into whatever suits the puppet masters pulling the strings. And until we build defenses capable of matching their speed and ingenuity, we remain sitting ducks in the digital crosshairs. Part 6. Echoes across borders. This global phenomenon has played out in every time zone and every political system, always with the same ruthless efficiency. Identify the fault line, amplify it until it cracks wide open, then watch the world squabble over the long shards. Take the 2016 US presidential election, where they created content promoting one side of a cultural or political rift, then ran parallel campaigns advocating for the opposite stance. They organized Facebook events for real-world rallies that never existed, engineered millions of ad impressions targeted at swing state demographics, amplified the famous buttery males, and flooded Twitter with contradictory narratives until no one could tell the real from the fake. Their goal was not simply to elect one person over another, though they certainly had a preference. It was to turn an election into a two-sided street brawl, where the only winner was confusion itself. Across the pond, in the United Kingdom, the saga was no less spectacular. In the run-up to the 2016 Brexit referendum, bot armies on Twitter and Facebook plastered feeds with apocalyptic warnings about immigration, sovereignty, and a return to the glory days of empire, scaremongering memes about non-existent EU army deployments, and lawsuits against British homeowners went viral, all while genuine concerns about trade and regulation were drowned in a chorus of outrage. Some of the same disinformation architects who honed their craft in Eastern Europe quietly sold their services to UK campaigns, turning complex policy discussions into Instagram-friendly slogans, and turning voters' reasonable anxieties into a tidal wave of xenophobia. When the referendum passed by a razor-thin margin, the question wasn't only should we leave, but how many of those votes came from a distortion machine? The result was a country cleaved in half, still grappling with the fallout nearly a decade later. In South Africa, the 2024 elections became a textbook case of rage bait export gone wrong. Foreign actors and local mercenary influencers collaborated to exploit every social fault line, from race and economic inequality to water rights, then fed the smoldering embers back into global news cycles. Fabricated videos claimed that a township protest had led to mass looting of affluent suburbs. Audio deepfakes suggested opposition leaders were plotting violent coups, and meme accounts portrayed complex land reform debates as existential threats to civilization. The outcome wasn't just political upheaval, it was an eruption of communal distrust that drove wedges between neighbors and weakened fragile coalitions campaigns dedicated to social justice. NGOs and journalists who tried to push back found themselves outpaced by automated disinformation networks that could generate and distribute propaganda at lightning speed. Even high-stakes war zones aren't immune. In Ukraine, long before the tanks rolled across the border, there was an information blitzkrieg of doctored satellite images proving NATO troop buildups, fake eyewitness videos dramatizing phantom Ukraine atrocities, and bot-driven hashtags storms turning once neutral reporting into partisan warfare. Every time Western news outlets debunked a claim, new videos or posts emerged seconds later because the architecture of the disinformation apparatus was built to operate at network speed, while fact-checkers still relied on email chains and manual verification. The relentless pressure campaign sapped international resolve and turned public opinion polls into who can shout louder contests, giving Moscow enough cover to launch a full-scale invasion, while global attention was stuck in a whirlpool of alternative realities. From Brazil's rainforest debates to India's communal tensions, from the Philippines' election maneuvering to Canada's pipeline protests, the playbook gets reprinted, remixed, and relabeled for every cultural context. The same mercenaries, the same hollow rhetoric, the same hollowed-out pages posing as independent journalism just retargeted to exploit whatever fault line will pay the highest price in clicks and ad revenue. The result is that no democracy, no matter how robust, is safe, and no movement for social justice, no matter how noble, can rely on pure earnestness when its opponents have entire industries devoted to manufacturing doubts about its legitimacy. Part 7. The Price of Influence. By now it should be obvious that these influence operations are a systemic assault on the very notion of democracy and social cohesion. The first casualty is always trust. When every tweet might be a Trojan horse, when every news clip could be a deepfake, people stop believing in institutions, the press, the courts, the electoral commission, even the health authorities. Trust isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's democracy's structural steel. Once that rusts, the building begins to collapse. Citizens start assuming bad faith on all sides, retreating into echo chambers where their biases are soothed and their suspicions confirmed, until the idea of a neutral, shared set of facts becomes as quaint as dial-up internet. From that foundation of distrust, polarization blooms like a toxic algae. Influence campaigns intentionally manufacture extremism at the margins, pumping radical content to swing voters who were previously indifferent, amplifying fear narratives to make compromise feel like surrender, and then letting social media's engagement algorithms do the rest. Every new flashpoint, be it immigration, economic policy, or public health, is weaponized to alienate half of the population from the other. Before you know it, political opponents look less like fellow citizens and more like existential threats. Prisons become more appealing than policy debates because locking up the opposition feels safer than building middle ground with them. The price of this manufactured division is not just a rift in public discourse, but a breakdown in our ability to govern ourselves peacefully. Elections, the supposed cornerstone of democratic renewal, become the grand stage for this disinformation theater. When half the electorate believes the vote is rigged, voter suppression tactics designed by the same operatives who hijack social feeds suddenly look like reasonable precautions. Deepfake videos of candidates saying horrific things, hyper-targeted smear ads that never appear in public ad registries, and misinformation campaigns about polling station closures can all reduce turnout, taint results, and cast a long shadow of illegitimacy. Even a straightforward landslide victory can be portrayed as stolen triumph if enough influential voices keep claiming fraud. And because these voices can be bots, sock puppets, or anonymous pages, there is little accountability. The ballot box no longer decides outcomes. The information ecosystem does. While elites bicker over legality and policy, the real collateral damage hits ordinary people the hardest. Mental health deteriorates under constant alarm. Anxiety skyrockets when your feed is a carnival of existential crises. Burnout follows when anger becomes your default emotion, and cynicism seeps in when you suspect that any story, good or bad, has a hidden agenda. Communities fracture as neighbors accuse each other of being paid shills or out-of-touch elites. Social trust evaporates, leaving a cold, grinding mechanism where collaboration once flourished. The mental and emotional toll is not an externality, it is a core objective of these campaigns. A demoralized populace is easier to manipulate manipulate, more likely to disengage, and less capable of mounting collective demands for truth. The global consequences reverberate far beyond broken democracies. When adversarial states see the dividends paid by digital subversion, they double down on real-world aggression, secure in the knowledge that international outrage can be muted or redirected. Authoritarian regimes point to Western chaos as proof that democracy doesn't work, justifying their own crackdowns on dissent. Meanwhile, corporate interests exploit the confusion to sidestep regulations and push through extractive projects under the guise of national security or public order. The very idea of a rules-based international order built on agreed norms of transparency, accountability, and cooperation teeters on the brink of collapse. In the final tally, the price of unchecked influence operations is nothing less than the erosion of the social contract. If citizens no longer trust each other, if elections no longer command legitimacy, if public discourse is reduced to a screaming match, then we might as well call it quits on pluralistic governance. The alternative is a technocratic oligarchy. Or worse, a balkanized patchwork of enclaves where basic facts are negotiable and power is secured not at the ballot box, but at the botnet console, and that is the true cost we're paying, a price we might not be able to afford. Part 8. Shielding the digital public. We have surveyed the carnage, from fractured democracies, burned out activists, and families fighting over fake videos of their own relatives to the puppet masters hauling cables through the world's data centers, rigging our feeds like marionettes in a global puppet show. But now comes the part where we desperately try to take the remote control from their sticky fingers, because if we don't, the future looks a lot less like the West Wing and more like a quiz show hosted by angry AI deepfakes. First, and I know you have been hearing this a lot recently, but we need to learn some damn media literacy. This isn't about learning dry textbook definitions of propaganda. It is a survival curriculum. We need to teach everyone from grade school how to spot emotional bait, trace a meme back to its origin, and read beyond the headline. Classrooms should be laboratories for real-time debunking exercises, with students dissecting live social media posts like surgeons performing digital autopsies. Because the day you can glance at a viral quote and instinctively know that it's sourced from a troll farm, that's the day we win the first battle. Until then, every share button remains a landmine. But schooling alone won't cut it. We need fact-checking that is built into our digital DNA. Social platforms cling to their engagement stats like a life raft. But if they truly value civic health over ad revenue, they will integrate transparent, rapid response fact-checking as a default feature, and those external sources they link must be independent, interdisciplinary, and ironclad in their impartiality. Otherwise, it's just more spin in different packaging. Regulation must catch up to the chaos. We cannot rely on CEOs playing whack-a-mole with disinformation because they have already proven that profit incentives will always trump public good. Governments have to step in with unambiguous rules. Every political ad must bear a digital watermark. Every micro-targeted message must be logged in a public repository. And any network of accounts found coordinating inauthentic behavior should be nuked from cyberspace. I don't care if regulation is a four-letter word in startup circles. When your startup is destabilizing elections, it's time to read a few legal briefs, because there is nothing libertarian about a reality where the only truth is the one your algorithm feeds you. The very technologies that fuel this inferno can help extinguish it. AI and machine learning are not just weapons in the wrong hands. They can be shields in the right ones. We need coordinated R&D into systems that sniff out botnets by their behavior patterns, flag deepfakes by detecting impossible facial micro-expressions, and map disinformation networks by analyzing rapid-fire posting spikes. These defense systems should be open source and distributed globally, so no single corrupt actor can buy exclusive access. It is a pitched arms race, but when the bad guys already have the first move, we have no choice but to field the defense, and the platforms must bear responsibility. For years, they have bashed their chests about connecting the world, all while quietly optimizing for outrage. Algorithms that reward sensationalism with prime placement are the real secret sauce in the influence industrial complex. It is time for radical transparency. Users should be able to see exactly why each post is recommended, which signals triggered its promotion, and who paid to boost it. No more black box magic. If a platform cannot open its recipe book and let regulatory chefs inspect the ingredients, then its engagement is just gilded manipulation. Finally, none of these measures will succeed in isolation. We need a global coalition of governments, civil society, academic institutions, institutions, tech firms, and everyday internet users. Think of it as an alliance against digital dystopia, a new version of NATO, but with fact checkers instead of tanks. Cross-border task forces will share intelligence on emerging disinformation tactics. Universities will analyze psychological impacts in real time. NGOs will run mass media literacy drives in vulnerable communities, and journalists will hold every actor accountable with relentless investigative pressure. Every node in the ecosystem must see itself as a sentinel, because if one link fails, the chain of trust snaps. This sounds like a lot, and it is. But remember, the alternative is surrender. Surrender to a future where every debate is rigged by unseen hands, every vote shadowed by doubt, every neighbor suspicious of each other's motives. So yeah, let's rant about tyrannical regulation or preach about big tech, but let's also build the tools, the laws, the curricula, and the coalitions that will push back, because the same networked world that amplifies our darkest impulses can also amplify our shared determination to defend reality itself. That's it for this deep dive into the digital trenches. If you've made it this far without tossing your phone into the nearest river, congratulations. You are already more resilient than most. But remember, outrage is easy. Resilience takes work. That's all for Brainrot News. Like, comment, and subscribe before we're replaced with a bot farm.